I think that becomes the superpower in business, is that what you're doing most likely matters to you a whole lot. And you can use that to your advantage, but also really connect with clients, I think, in a way that is quite unique, because that depth of empathy, what a gift. I mean, it can feel sometimes not like a gift, because, you take on some heavy stuff and that can be really hard. But, I work as a counsellor. That's the main part of my business, counsellor and yoga teacher. And I would be as good a counsellor as I am, and I would say that I'm a very good one. I wouldn't be as good as I am if I didn't have that level of sensitivity.
Your business, your rules. Grow a business that works for you. This is the HerBusiness Podcast. Hi and welcome to the HerBusiness Podcast. I'm Susie Daphnis. I'm your host and I'm the CEO at HerBusiness. And there's a word that jumps out at me when I think about business success, and that word is grit. I think you need to be gritty in order to do this. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I also think you need determination and passion, also good things. But there are some stereotypical words and ideas that are also aligned with business success. And they're things like you don't want to have too much emotion. You don't want to be seen to be weak or too empathetic. You want to trust your mind more than your instinct. So what happens when the words that are supposed to fit our job description of a CEO don't fit us as people? What if we're actually very emotional? What if we are actually very sensitive? What if we can pick up on energy and emotion so easily that it's impossible to ignore it? Does that mean we're not fit to be business owners or successful CEOs? Well, no. I can tell you that because I consider myself to be a highly sensitive CEO. And while someone else might see that as a disadvantage, I believe that it gives me an edge, an understanding, a power. And I think that this is the case for a lot of women business owners who might not have, up until now, recognized themselves as a sensitive CEO. And the good news is that we don't have to mold ourselves into a form that doesn't fit us. We can remold the definition itself. And that is why I'm really excited about today's conversation, because it's not discussed enough. And here's what I want to ask. How can you lead when you feel emotions deeply? How can you make decisions when you pick up on things that others don't? How can you use something that is often stigmatized to your advantage? I've brought longtime HerBusiness member Erica Webb of the Self-Kind Hub to talk with us today about what it means to be a sensitive CEO and why empathy and emotions are actually a secret weapon to making your business better, even when others maybe might consider it a weakness. Now, Erica is a counsellor, a yoga teacher, a somatic exercise coach, and she specialises in supporting highly sensitive people. She knows what it's like to live as a sensitive person in an often very insensitive world, and she has incredible success despite it. She has worked in the wellbeing industry for 15 years, blending evidence-based counselling with somatic tools to help her clients feel more grounded and resilient and aligned with their values. She's also the founder of High Sensitivity Australia. She's the host of the podcast Self-Kind, and she's the co-host of the Midlife Unfiltered podcast. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with her and to show you that your emotions and empathy are actually your strongest tools. Let's welcome Erica to the show. Erica, hi and welcome.
Hello, Susie. It's so lovely to be with you.
We were just saying just before we started recording that it's been a long time since we've seen each other's faces. So for those of you listening, we're actually seeing each other in the video version of the podcast, and I'm just so happy to see you.
Likewise, I have missed your face.
We're talking about a really interesting topic, and I explained to you something popped up in my Instagram feed, and it was a topic I hadn't heard about before, but that made me think of you immediately. And so let's start here, because not all of our listeners are going to be familiar with the term of being a highly sensitive person, or HSP. Can you tell us what that is and what might that look like in the life, say, of a business owner?
Yeah, absolutely. So being a highly sensitive person just to sort of like rewind just a little bit, being highly sensitive, about 20 to 30% of the population will be highly sensitive. So it's actually not that uncommon, but it really speaks to a depth of processing. So it's a little bit like, if you think about the fact that everybody has a nervous system, a highly sensitive person has a really supercharged one. So everything that comes into the system is processed very deeply, which means that as highly sensitive people, we can get overwhelmed quite easily and overstimulated. We also tend to have a very strong sense of empathy and can sometimes feel a little bit like we absorb other people's emotions or kind of can't differentiate between what's mine and what's theirs. And often highly sensitive people will also have sensory sensitivities. So sensitivity to bright lights, loud noises, unexpected noises, clothing even, things like that. And so being sensitive can mean that when we move through the world feels kind of like a harsh place because it's noisy, it's, unpredictable, it's demanding, and it judges us, which as highly sensitive people can be really hard. We tend to be quite sensitive to feedback and sensitive to criticism and sensitive to rejection as well. So you can imagine that as a business owner, that can be a little bit difficult because you do get rejected, you do get no's, you do have yourself on the line. So
unexpected things happen, so whether, you talked about noise, but yeah, things come out of the blue. And so I consider myself one of the 30%, I have to say, and I think I shared that with you. And I think there's always great value in just understanding ourselves better as we navigate through the world in life and certainly in business, and looking at, well, if this is my way of being right now, what can I do to use that to my advantage or still show up as I want to show up, despite, in my case, and I said this to a coach of mine, I said, I feel everything. And sometimes it's heavy and sometimes it's not heavy, but I can just, like you said, empathy, like I can feel a lot. So how do I, keep myself a clear and neutral channel as I move about my world? So I'm keen to hear more about that. Now, I'm going to assume that you identify as sensitive as well. Yeah, go.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a highly sensitive person. I rate pretty much as high as you can get. I am also autistic. So I've been diagnosed autistic ADHD. So I am, I very much fit in that category. And there is overlap with neurodivergence and highly sensitive people, but they are distinct.
But they are distinct. And so I'd love to know a little about your journey as identifying as, we're going to refer to it as like a sensitive CEO, a sensitive business owner. If you identify with that, how, when you did start to identify with that, did that change how you ran your business, if it did?
Yeah, I think I knew I was sensitive before I started business. So I've been in business for myself for about 15 years, but for a long time that was teaching yoga classes, and that was kind of the extent of it. I had my ABN and I ran my yoga classes, and that was kind of it. And then maybe 10 years ago, that expanded. And so knowing that I was sensitive, I think in the early years, it was something that I knew but didn't really necessarily respect very much. And so I didn't change how I ran my business to suit myself. And I think that's been the really big change for me as I kind of became more aware of what that really meant to be a sensitive business owner, and the fact that I couldn't change it. It's one of those things, it is who we are, it is part of us, it's inbuilt. We are born that way and we will die that way. That is just who we are. And so once I realized that this isn't a matter of me not trying hard enough or not being good enough or not being tough enough, but it's actually a request for me to do things in a way that honor my reality. That changed things for me, because suddenly it was like, some of the ways that you're going to be told to do business aren't going to suit you, right? And on top of that, there are going to be the just harsh realities that rejection is going to sting. And so if you're going to persist as a CEO, if you're going to persist as a business owner, then you're going to need to look after yourself as a priority. That has to almost be your job, and then your CEO after that. And I think that's the shift for me, is recognizing that nothing works if I'm not working. It just doesn't. And so if I'm not tending to my sensitivity, then I do myself a disservice, but I do my business a disservice and I do my clients a disservice because I can't be my best if I don't look after it.
Well, we'll definitely talk about some of the things that you do to maintain that sense of centeredness and that self-care during today's interview. How do you think some of the traits of being a highly sensitive person, things like empathy that you mentioned, or really being able to tune into emotion, how can it help us build stronger businesses? Because I think the word, especially, this is an all-women community, so it's a little different. It probably lands a little easier, but I can imagine that, identifying as a sensitive business owner would be a no-no out there in the world. You embrace it as a strength. Tell us about that. How do we, if we do identify with what you're talking about, how do we use it to build a stronger business?
I really think it comes down to it. I think it does come down to that empathy piece, because who is better positioned to understand their client than a highly sensitive person? No one. Because you literally, and for so many of us, we work with kind of previous versions of ourselves, I suppose. And so we are in such a unique position to truly understand the pain that our clients potentially feel, and to deliver our services in a way that is really values aligned for us. Because I think that's something that gets missed in the conversation about a highly sensitive person often. But this need that we have, a very, very deep need to be aligned with our own sense of what's right. So our own sense of our values, our own sense of purpose. For a highly sensitive person, we can't show up at a job that doesn't mean anything to us. That will be like torture. So I think that becomes the superpower in business, is that what you're doing most likely matters to you a whole lot. And you can use that to your advantage, but also really connect with clients, I think, in a way that is quite unique, because that depth of empathy, what a gift. I mean, it can feel sometimes not like a gift, because, you take on some heavy stuff and that can be really hard. But, I work as a counsellor. That's the main part of my business, counsellor and yoga teacher. And I would be as good a counsellor as I am, and I would say that I'm a very good one. I wouldn't be as good as I am if I didn't have that level of sensitivity. So I think that's probably true for most sensitive business owners. They're good at what they do because they're sensitive, not in spite of it.
Do you feel like you've ever had to override your sensitivity in order to be taken seriously or put yourself forward for something where you showed up as a business leader, but there wasn't a listening for you being who you are?
That's a good question. I think I have to navigate my sensitivity frequently. But as for overcoming it or like trying to squash it, not anymore. I certainly don't do that now. If I feel like I'm being asked to do that, it's just a hard no for me. However, I think I have to manage my sensitivity quite a lot, because, I'll open my email provider and see that 10 people unsubscribed from my last newsletter, or I'll see that a client cancelled, or I'll see that, any number of things have happened, and my sensitivity just goes on overdrive, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's less about do I have to override it, and it's more when do I need to be really aware of its impact on what I want to do. Because there's days where my sensitivity would tell me, just don't do this anymore. It's probably easier just to have a job and to not worry about all these things that feel so hard. So I think I have to manage that very, very frequently. But I'm not sure that I've put myself in positions anytime in the last probably decade where I felt like I've had to really squash it. Do you know what actually immediately came to mind when you asked me that question?
Tell me.
I remember flying to HerBusiness Live.
Yes.
It was an in-person, and I was terrified, Susie, terrified. I remember I woke up in the morning and I flew in and flew out from Melbourne to Sydney in the day. And my sensitivity was off the charts that day. I had to fly by myself, which I didn't like. I don't like doing. I had to talk to people that I didn't know, and keep in mind I'm also autistic, so that was like a lot.
Yeah.
And so in those moments, I think there is this sense of like, maybe a little bit of I have to present myself as though I'm not kind of like, white knuckling my way through this day.
Yeah.
But that would be probably the most extreme example I can think of, where, sometimes putting yourself in the spotlight can be difficult. But I think of it more as how do I support and manage my sensitivity rather than how do I get it out of the way.
You make such a good point, and I'm sorry you had to endure that. I'm so glad you did, though, because I got to see you in person. But it speaks to not the need, but being more visible, showing up in our marketing. I know for me, podcasts are fabulous. Webinars are fabulous. Being face-to-face takes a little more energy from me. It's a little bit harder. And so when I do go into those environments, sometimes I do feel like I have to white knuckle it and just try not to collapse under the pressure of being out of my comfort zone. And we know the importance of being visible in marketing. These areas can be difficult, as you just explained, for highly sensitive people if done a particular way. And there's even apparently research that says that women are less likely to self-promote publicly because they hesitate that judgment that you talked about earlier. So how do we handle self-promotion, public visibility, pitching for our business as a sensitive business owner?
Oh, it's actually so hard. And I think my answer to everything, some of my clients laugh and joke about this, but my answer to everything is self-compassion. Like, you could just ask me any question. I'd be like, self-compassion is the answer. But I do think that's my answer for this question, because it is so hard to self-promote. I think it's hard anyway, but I think as a highly sensitive person, it's hard because we know that out of, 100 people, 95 of them are going to say no.
No.
It's like, and as someone who is sensitive to rejection and criticism, we know the internet can be the absolute Wild West when it comes to putting your content up. And so I think for me, it's acknowledging that is going to be how I feel. I'm not going to be the person who just lets it wash off my back. It's not who I am. However, if I can meet myself with compassion when I feel that sense of like, what did I do wrong? Why doesn't anyone like me? That feeling of like, I've been rejected. This is all terrible. Maybe I should just quit. If I can meet myself with compassion, then that is for me the way through, because the compassion acknowledges this is really hard. And you can choose to be kind to yourself in that moment. Because that's the truth. Self-promotion is, I actually don't mind self-promotion so much these days. I feel like because I'm offering something that I feel is really valuable, I'm like, you know what, it's not for everyone, and that's okay. But those sort of flippant kind of like, just be okay with the fact that not everybody's going to like you, that doesn't land for most highly sensitive people, because you're like, how can I be okay with that? I want everyone to love me, please. So I do think it's that ability that we have, and we have to practice it, but that ability that we have to be able to sit and say, you know what, this hurts my heart. And I can choose how I respond to myself in that pain. I don't have to make it mean that I'm a terrible person. I don't have to make it mean that what I'm doing doesn't matter. There is a way through it that doesn't deny how you feel.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful honour of being invited to speak to on a physical stage to hundreds of entrepreneurs, people that I could spend all day long with. And yet in that environment, I felt a little bit kind of exposed and very self-judgmental, not very self-compassionate. And yet I love those environments and I want them. So I love what you're saying. It's just about that self-compassion when we do it. Like, not everyone's going to laugh at your joke, Susie. Not everybody's going to get the point of that bit that you made. Not everyone's going to come up and pat you on the back. Of course, I wasn't expecting that. But just giving ourselves a little bit of grace as we step into these environments that we all have choice to or not. Like, I could have said, no, sorry, I don't want to do that. But in order for us to continue to grow, I think we don't want to use this description of ourselves to pull back, but really to be able to manage ourselves in those situations. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, very much. Because I think if we pull back and we hide, then what we tend to sort of affirm for ourselves is that our sensitivity makes us weak. And I just don't think that's true. It's not my experience anyway. So I think that when we can, what you're sort of saying there is like you knew what was important to you. It was important for you to show up. And so when we are clear on that, that's something that I come back to time and time again is like, no, I'm choosing to keep going with this. This is important to me. What I do is important to me, and I think it's important in the world. And so, yeah, I'm going to feel uncomfortable at times. But if I can be nice to myself in that process, or not even nice, kind, then that's sustainable. Whereas if we can't do that, I think it becomes quite unsustainable for a highly sensitive person, because the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to kind of get stuck in self-blame and shame and, just
self-flagellation.
Exactly. That's it. 100%. Yeah.
Do you want to say something about action taking? Like, does being highly sensitive impact our ability to take action at all in any way? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, my experience of being highly sensitive is that I'm also, like I said, autistic ADHD. So the ADHD gets me taking action quite frequently, but sometimes
in many different directions.
Yeah, a little haphazard sometimes. But I think it comes back to this sort of. I often think of there being a little bit of a tug of war, maybe a little bit, where perhaps the parts of your high sensitivity that want to keep you really safe, away from criticism, away from judgment, they might make it feel like taking action is hard. But then I think the pull that we have as highly sensitive people towards what matters to us, towards our values, towards making an impact, towards having a sense of purpose, that can be the thing that pulls us through. So I do think that it's easier to be aware of the hard stuff. It's kind of easier to be aware of my sensitivity makes it feel difficult maybe sometimes to take forward action because I'm worried about being rejected or judged.
Right.
Or I'm just quite frankly tired. That's part of it too, right? Sort of those fluctuating energy patterns can be difficult. But I think if we are really aware of, oh no, but remember this is what matters, then it's sort of the vision that can keep us, and not even the vision, but the sense of purpose, the sense of contribution that I think pulls, kind of like acts as like a bit of a pulley and brings us along. So I think sometimes, it's the bigger picture. I think sometimes for the highly sensitive, we have to get out of the fear, and not even get out of it, but like acknowledge, yep, I'm going to feel that because this is who I am, but this is still really important. So let's go.
I love what you're saying there. And it's why I'm such a champion for having a compelling vision that pulls you forward, because I will wake up every day and go out there and support my women, the women in the HerBusiness community. And I will do that because I'm just so, my vision to support them is so strong and I'm so connected to it, then I can get beyond myself in order to do that. Not denying, not overriding my own boundaries, but just I'm so compelled by this vision that it'll have me show up every single day.
Yeah.
And take action.
I think that's the important thing that you said there. It's like not to override your boundaries. It's like, and I think that's, it's a little bit more work maybe for the highly sensitive among us to acknowledge that, I'm going to have to be aware of my values, and I'm going to have to be aware of my boundaries, and I'm going to have to exercise them and practice all of these things, because it doesn't really come naturally. I don't think it takes a little bit of work. So, and respecting, like I said, those fluctuating energy levels, which can be really a big challenge for the highly sensitive.
I wanted to go back to what you said earlier about how you manage yourself. So have you changed the way you work or what you do on a daily basis in order to kind of come back to yourself, or what you say yes to or no to? Like, what are the filters that you process through?
Yeah, at the moment, my filters are a little in need of a clean, because I'm studying at the moment and I'm working full time, and I'm a mum of 2 kids, so it's a little hazy at the moment. But I think we go through those periods, right?
Right.
However, I have, I guess, sort of there's maybe 2 parts to that question in terms of like there's a self-care element to that and a boundaries element. So one of the things that I do is I don't start work before 9:30, because really important to me that I usually drop off at least one of my children at school, and I don't want to be rushed, because rushing is probably my biggest kryptonite as a highly sensitive person. I find that really discombobulating. So there's little things like that. And, you know, I finish up work and go and pick up my kids. So I have a shortish day. I tend to work a little bit after, but for me, it's less hours is really important for my well-being. So I definitely don't work long hours relative to some. And I used to be very good at managing my days so that I was doing kind of similar things on certain days, so that I wasn't doing a lot of task switching, which can be really tiring. That sort of slipped a little bit, but that had worked really well for me. And then in terms of just self-care, my sleep is very protected. So I don't do late nights, because if I haven't slept, I'm literally useless. I prioritize eating, because again, if I'm hungry, like literally watch out. I'm not my best self. And you know, it's just overwhelming. So prioritizing just really simple self-care, eating, sleeping, making sure I drink water. And I try to take little pauses. So for me, just literally a moment is key. I have to have moments where I'm not being spoken to, where I'm not talking, where I'm not taking in visual information. I just go into a little cone of silence. And I try to do that frequently, even if it's just very brief.
Like throughout the day?
Yep, throughout the day. I do little pauses where I do like some deep breathing. I hum a bit to try to sort of regulate my nervous system. So I have these like tiny micro practices, I guess, that I do throughout the day. As a movement teacher, I also, you know, just do little bits of movement to kind of, I guess, address the accumulation that happens throughout the day in a sensitive body. Because what we're doing so often is kind of bracing against the world, right? Because this is coming, that is coming from there, and we have that deadline, and we have that thing, and it kind of all just piles up. So I'm very mindful of using my body to kind of act as a bit of a barometer and noticing, you know what, I'm like so tight. I need to go and move. I need to take a breath. I need to take a break. So I think for me, it's that awareness of it's kind of just like self-awareness, right? And going, how am I actually? And do I need to do something to support myself here? That's kind of my filter, I guess. So I won't push. Like if I'm struggling to find my words to record a podcast, I'll just abandon it. I'll just say, you know what? I'm not there today. This is just not, there's no point in pushing, because I know that my sensitivity is such that if I keep pushing against what is sort of there, it just sort of ends in more overwhelm and usually not a finished product. So for me, it's about knowing myself really well, so that then I can just go, if I just stop and I go and rest and I come back, this is going to be fine. But if I keep going, I am going to end up in a puddle on the floor. So it's kind of a combination of things. I hope that answers your question. But
it definitely does. And I feel like to everyone listening, this is so useful, whether you associate with being a highly sensitive person or not. Everything Erica said there is just such a wonderful practice to get into our self-care, for lack of a better word, you know, but it is that, but you're so finely attuned to yourself and so self-aware that that came through very, very clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you know, self-care is such a loaded word, and I use it all the time. So no, you know, it's not a judgment, but I think at the end of the day, for a sensitive person, I almost like to think of it as being like self-respect. It's this way of respecting the needs of your sensitive system. And I think if we can look at it that way, because the reality is it's not changing. You're not going to not be sensitive. If you were sensitive 10 years ago, you're not going to be not sensitive now. That's just not how that works. Yeah. So if you can respect it and go, what does it need? In much the same way that we would do for our pets or our children or our spouse or our friend, we would be like, we would do that. So yeah, it's simple, but it's not always easy.
Easy. How did the traits that we've talked about, the depth of processing, the emotional attunement, how might they shape leadership, intuition, brand authenticity inside of our businesses?
That's such an interesting question. I think it kind of comes back to, I sort of feel a little bit like I'm repeating myself, but apologies. I think it comes back to that self-awareness, right, of going, not fighting against who we are.
Who you
like
are,
in terms of the brand authenticity piece, right? I am me through and through. Like, you come and see me for a session, I am the same person. You see me on social media, I am the same person. And I think that for me anyway, and I don't know how well this translates to other highly sensitive people, but I think it does to an extent, there are always clues that I'm out of authenticity, or that I'm pushing in a way that doesn't make sense, or that I'm against my intuition. There are always signs, because your sensitive system, it's so clever. And so I think if we can learn to use our sensitivity almost as like a filter, to be like, does this feel right? Does this feel aligned? Does this feel, values driven for me? Does this feel respectful of me and my capacity? That's when I think it can really lead to almost like self-leadership, right? Like, and I don't have a team, so the leadership piece for me is more around self-leadership and leading, I guess, a brand.
Leading your clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that filter for me works really well, because it is quite easy in business to override our needs. It's so easy to overextend ourselves and to overpromise and to get overwhelmed and to kind of become a slave to the thing we've created. And so I do think the highly sensitive are in that fairly unique position of being able to use their sensitivity as a measurement tool, like a bit of a litmus test of like, how are things? Because if it's showing up in me as incongruence, then I really want to be paying attention to that.
And I'm just, as I'm listening to you, I can hear the word feel again and again. And I think that's a key thing. It's this feeling into your next step, or how you show up, or where you show up, or what you do next. And I think that the more attuned we can get to our emotions, because as business owners, sometimes we live very much in our head. We've got our plans, our systems, and our marketing, and our funnels, and our whatever, and all that is important. And really becoming more and more attuned to who we are. Erica, as you know, we have these 8 growth zones and there's areas of business that every successful business has working for them. And one of them is not as practical as the others. It is the you growth zone. And that is about really getting to know you, because as we know, owning your own business is the biggest personal development course you could ever do. So the more we know who we are, the more attuned, the more we can feel, I think the easier it is for us to show up as ourselves and create the businesses and the lives that we love, not the ones that we see on Instagram or that our competition is doing. And nothing is more freeing, I believe, than when we can finally step into that. And I know, again, it's simple, but it's not easy to really be authentically you, to really honor your own values, to honor your own boundaries. So thank you. This is such an important conversation. You kind of answered this one, but I'm going to ask it in case there's another way we come at it. And that is, are there structures that support rather than drain sensitive women in the entrepreneur role? You've told us about some of your things. No work before 9:30. You're not saying yes to anything that's a no. Any other systems or structures that you feel like those listening could incorporate into their roles?
Yeah, I think having other highly sensitive business owners in your corner.
Good.
Yeah, I think, because what can feel overwhelming, I think, to a highly sensitive person, and the thing that's really interesting about having a conversation about being highly sensitive is so many people will hear it and be like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that other people felt like that. I thought it was just me. And so I think in you've got this 20 to 30% of people who are highly sensitive, but then you have this much smaller percentage who choose to go and be entrepreneurs and run their own businesses. And so it can feel, especially when we exist within a climate of entrepreneurship that is kind of very bro heavy, it isn't really speaking to the highly sensitive entrepreneur. It can feel pretty lonely. And I think for me, I've spent a lot of years looking and going, oh, I'm not doing it right. Like I'm not doing this the way that other people do it. And so I think having other examples of highly sensitive entrepreneurs in your life can be really helpful. And then I think it's about the structures that work for you. So I struggle with structure really badly. That is something that I'm like, I probably need a VA, let's be honest. But
I think everyone needs a VA.
I'm like, I know what I need. It's fine. But I do think it's like, in terms of what do we need? It's like, what do you need to be supported? So it's kind of getting curious about your needs as a human and your needs as a business owner, and then putting in place the structures that actually support that. So in a little bit sort of similar to what you asked me before around another question you asked, which I can't remember, but this idea of, well, what do you need? Because you could have this whole list of things that businesses need, but what is it that you need? So like I know for me, my sensitivity is such that I get really overwhelmed by the details. So probably that would be the best place for me to put in structure, would be around those processes that overwhelm me. So I do think for other business owners, it's kind of like doing a real deep dive on almost like an inventory of how does my sensitivity show up, and how does it show up in my business, and how do I feel like it limits me? And that's where I think then we can get curious about, well, what are the structures? What are the tools? What are the resources? What are the people that I need to support that, who are going to affirm my experiences rather than shame me or try to make me something that I'm not.
And I think it's important as leaders as well, especially if we have a team, for them to understand your needs. So, for example, I do some weeks where I have a lot of back-to-back client-facing work, and my team knows I can only do about 4 of those appointments before I'm toast. And so it's like, okay, well, we're only going to book you in. And I know that if I've been on a trip or I'm out of town all next week because we're running an event in another state, I come back, I need at least 3 days of clear, nothing, no client-facing work. And just because I need to kind of recuperate and I need to get back to myself because I've been doing so much peopling that I need to come back and feel organized. So I think that it is really asking yourself, what is it that you need, and then being willing to create those structures within your organization. Maybe it is no meetings before 9:30 because that's the time where I'm kind of having my herbal tea and I'm kind of, centering myself or whatever it is. So really giving ourselves permission to create those structures. And even if you're not a systems person, just, what are the conditions, as my coach says, what are the conditions you require in order to function? So that's what it is. All right. I want to ask you 2 questions. The first one is, you mentioned that you are a counsellor and that you also teach yoga. How can our listeners who are women business owners, how can they work with you?
Yeah. The sticky self-promotion piece, Susie, that we were just talking about, how difficult it is. I love it. That's very meta. So I do work one-on-one with women, women and men actually, but I work one-on-one primarily with highly sensitive and neurodivergent people. So that's in a counselling capacity. So that's very much around anxiety, overwhelm, even past trauma, things like that. So that is one option. And I certainly do work with business owners in that capacity, not as a coach, but very much as a counsellor.
As a counsellor.
And I run a online membership called the Self-Kind Hub. And that's where I really teach to a group the ways that we can support our sensitivity both through movement and self-inquiry and self-understanding. So I kind of blend my movement stuff. There's lots of like movement classes, but I blend it with the counsellor hat on. And I have little mini courses around how to understand your values and how to live into your values, how to take inventory of your sensitivity and sort of figure out what it is that you need to support yourself, self-compassion mini course, all sorts of things like that. So that's
good. Great.
Membership. Yeah, which I love. So it's a really beautiful space. So best place to come and find me is just on my website, which is ericawebb.com.au. So it's really simple.
Thank you. Put a link to that in our show notes. Finally, here at Her Business, as you know, Erica, we have a motto, which is do what you love every day. So what does a day in the life of Erica Webb look like in your business where you are doing what you love?
Exactly what I show up and do every day. I feel so grateful that I get to do what I love. And really, honestly, for me, that looks like getting up, going through the routine of the morning with my kids, dropping them off at school, coming back, seeing clients. I cap myself too, so I really don't see more than 4 or 5 clients a day, because more than that is just like way too much. Connecting with my community in the hub, teaching a class, and being able to go to bed at 9:30. That's literally that is my perfect day. And I work from home, and I love just being able to be home and make a coffee whenever I want to, and lie on the floor and roll around for a little bit. So I feel like I'm living the dream.
I love that you are living the dream. Thank you so much for being here with me today. You do such precious work. I adore you. And I want to say thank you for making time to have this conversation.
Thank you, Susie. I'm delighted. I'm so happy that we got to spend some time together.
I love that conversation, and my hope is that many of our listeners, perhaps you, feel liberated, feel like you can be more yourself. And I want you to think about the advantages that your sensitivity, if you associate with this, gives you. Whether you're a highly sensitive person or not, you have some of these traits: the care, the passion, the empathy. How does empathy actually give you a greater understanding of your ideal clients? How does it help you lead your team better? How does it break all the stereotypes and actually benefit you as a business owner and as a leader? So just like we talked about today, these traits can actually help your leadership, your intuition, your brand authenticity, and every part of your business. And I think that so many of us, so many women, choose to hide that sensitivity, thinking that it's a weakness or a negative thing. And I know that I have done that in the past. But I encourage you to embrace it, to sit in it, and to actually use it to make your business better. Just as Erica said, your sensitivity does not make you weak. It can actually be a secret weapon to making your own business, your success, your growth very unique and very powerful. Now, all of Erica's information is linked down in the show notes of this episode. She's an absolute gem. I highly encourage you to check out her work. She's such an advocate in this space and truly becoming a powerful voice. And I would so appreciate your thoughts on this episode. So, 2 things. 1, go ahead and check out Erica's details. You'll find all those details at herbusiness.com/331. And then I would love to hear your thoughts about this episode. If you've got something out of this discussion, if you've related to being a highly sensitive person, go ahead and leave a review on this episode. It means that the world gets to know about Erica's brilliance. It means people get to know that this podcast is somewhere you can come, no matter who you are, no matter how you show up. You can show up more as you. So wherever you get your podcasts, but especially Apple Podcasts, because it's the big kahuna of podcasts, let me know your thoughts. We're also going to be having this conversation about being a highly sensitive CEO over on the HerBusiness social media platforms, especially over on Instagram. You'll find us at HerBusiness on Instagram. And if you want to join other women like Erica inside the HerBusiness community, we're all here to better ourselves and our businesses, to create lives that we love, that are on our terms, that are by our rules. You can apply now to join. Now, all the information to join is also linked to on our show notes page, and I would love to see you inside of the community. We're a pretty special group. Now, usually we read words from listeners at the end of the show, but since Erica talked about self-promotion today, I thought it would be an opportunity to share some exciting news that we have here on the podcast. And that is this: we have been listed in the #1 spot in the top 10 Australian women lifestyle podcasts. This is a report that comes out once a year, and we are #1. And I'm so excited about that. And it corresponds to our 5 out of 5 rating on Apple. And so we would love it if you enjoyed this show, if you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the show, do me a favor and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It gets us this show out in front of more people. And also click to follow or subscribe to the show. That means every time we release a new episode, it's right there in your feed. You can also contact me directly over on Instagram. We are at HerBusiness on Instagram, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Simply send me a direct message. Once again, on our website, you will find Erica's details and links to all her different offers over at herbusiness.com/331, as well as a summary of today's episode and links to any resources that I think would be useful for you. Once again, remember to subscribe if you're new to the show, and join us next time right here on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.